It's my pleasure to introduce my colleague here at the Department of Computer Science, Professor Kai Lee. Professor Lee is an assistant professor, is generally interested in computer networks and system security. He graduated from Syracuse with his PhD in 2022, and right now his focus is on blockchains. And he's going to talk today about hardening the security of public blockchains. Go ahead.
All right, so yeah, thanks, Donnie, for the nice introduction. And it's my great pleasure today to talk about my recent research on understanding the security risks in public blockchains. So before I start my presentation, I would like to ask some questions. First, how many of you ever heard about blockchain and cryptocurrencies? Oh, pretty much all of you. That's very nice. And then how many of you actually knows how blockchain works? A few of you. Okay, that's good. So that's why I'm here today to talk about the blockchain. And hopefully after today's presentation, you will know how blockchain actually works and know the security risks in the blockchain. So over the past decade, the blockchain and cryptocurrency have experienced significant growth in the global market. As the figure shows, the top 5 cryptocurrencies market cap and the unit price. So we can say some of them are over hundreds of billions of US dollars, right? And so what are the difference between cryptocurrencies and digital currency? The major difference between them is that cryptocurrencies are built on top of blockchain technology, while traditional currency are controlled by central banks, right? So,
but there is most likely that the central banks will control these ones, even if they are not built the same way.
Okay, yeah, there are, sometimes people today, they are talking about this issue, right? That's good insight, actually. So, but for now, cryptocurrencies are still using blockchain technology to govern itself, right? So, blockchain is the foundation for today's cryptocurrencies. And apart from cryptocurrencies, people today are also using blockchain technology to build other type of applications, which is generally referred to as Web3 applications, right? For example, people are using blockchain technology to develop games and allow users to play games on top of blockchain. And in addition, people are also using blockchain technology to design and trade the digital collections through NFTs, non-fungible tokens. Right? So essentially, we can say blockchain works as the foundation for various decentralized applications, such as cryptocurrencies and Web3 applications. Okay? But essentially, how blockchain works. Okay? So let me first give an overview of how blockchain works. So essentially, blockchain is a peer-to-peer network. Okay, so in this peer-to-peer network, there are many nodes located in different countries. Okay, so each node connect to one and another nodes, and the nodes will propagate transactions and data through the network. Okay, so we can see many nodes in the world, they form a peer-to-peer network. And then for users can connect to one of the nodes and submit transactions. Okay. No problem. Yeah. So by submitting transactions, users can transfer cryptocurrencies from one account to another account. They can also submit transactions to play games, trade the NFTs. Okay. And then for the node that receives the user transactions, the node will propagate the transaction to every other node in this P2P network. And then in this network, there are some special nodes called miners. The miner's job is to process users' transactions and include the transaction in a data structure called a block. Okay? So essentially, a block is a data structure that includes a set of users' transactions. Okay? And the miner will then send the block to every other node. And then as time goes by, the next miner will produce the next block and include the next transaction in the new block. And then the new block is connected to the previous block. Okay, and so on and so forth. Another miner produce a new block and include the new transaction, and the new block is connected to the previous block. So we can say the miners will produce a chain of blocks, right? So that is so-called blockchain. Eventually, all of the miners will propagate the blocks to every other node, and every other node will save the blocks locally and maintain a local copy. Okay, so this is how blockchain essentially works. So we can say by this design, there are some properties of the blockchain, right? The first property is open membership. By open membership, it allows everybody to join the network and work as either a minor node or a normal node. Okay, so everybody can join the network, right? Both you and me, we can download the blockchain software and launch the software to join the network. The second property of the blockchain is the decentralization. By decentralization, it means there's no single party that controls the network, right? There's no central bank, right, in this system, actually. The third property of the blockchain is irreversibility. It means that once the user transactions are included in the block and received by all of the nodes in the network, the transaction cannot be reverted, and the block data cannot be tampered. The last property is for users, which is anonymity. By anonymity, it means that users can send the transactions using their public key and private keys. So essentially, the public key and private keys are some random strings for users, and there is no binding between users' keys and their real identity. So blockchain is anonymous for users to use. Okay, so essentially, there are the critical properties of the blockchain. So we can say with these properties of the blockchain, open membership, everybody can join the network, no single party controls the network, data cannot be changed, transaction cannot be reverted, and users will not leak their privacy, right? So these properties ensure that blockchain is secure, right? But the question is blockchain really secure? Is the blockchain really secure? If you ever saw some news on the social media, you will find that in the real world, people, users, or companies, they have lost a lot of money on top of blockchain. And some of them even lost hundreds of millions of US dollars. So this incident suggests that there are various threats and security risks in the blockchain. So what are the specific threats in the blockchain? So the first threat I'm going to talk about, which is caused by the first two properties of the blockchain, right? The open membership and the decentralization, right? It allows everybody to join the network and no single party controls the network. These properties seem to be a good design, right? It encourages people to join the network and behave honestly. But it also opens a new attack surface, right? Because attackers can also join the network and cause damages to the blockchain. And since no one controls the network, so you cannot prevent attackers from joining the network, right? So the first threat is attackers can join the network and attack the blockchain network. So to address this threat, my first research project focused on understanding and hardening the blockchain network security. So our focus are the critical infrastructures in the blockchain network. Okay. Let's recall how blockchain process users' transactions. On the left, you have some users. The users want to submit transactions to the blockchain. On the right-hand side, you have miners. The miner will read the transaction from the blockchain network and include the transaction into the block. And in this process, there are three critical infrastructures. The first infrastructure is the relay service. So relay service essentially is a web service that handles users' requests submit from their PCs or laptops or web browsers. Okay. And then once the relay service receives user transactions, they will translate the request into a transaction and then forward the transaction into the second infrastructure, which is the P2P network. Then every node in the P2P network will propagate the transaction to every other node. And eventually, the user transaction will be buffered in a data structure for the memory pool. And then, question?
I was just wondering, there's got to be some kind of software that supports this. Who maintains the software?
There are some real-world service that maintain these infrastructures.
So wouldn't that be another threat?
Say it again, sorry.
Wouldn't that be another threat?
Yeah, there is a threat that attacker can attack these service, this critical infrastructure, right? So we'll see it. We see it. Yeah. So we can say the user connection are buffered in the last infrastructure, which is the memory pool, and then the miners will fetch transactions from the memory pool and include the transaction into the block. So in this process, we can say these three critical infrastructure play an important role in delivering transactions from users to the miners. As I mentioned, the first threat is that attackers can join the network and participate in this process, right? The attacker can attack one of these critical infrastructures, right? Suppose that the attacker can disable the service of these critical infrastructures. What would be the consequence? We can say that both users and miners will be unhappy because for users, they cannot send a transaction anymore, right? They cannot get that transaction process and include by the miners. So blockchain become useless to the users. And for miners, they will be unhappy because they cannot include the transaction into the block. Right? They cannot make profit from serving users. Okay? So we can say a disabled blockchain network can affect both users and miners. Okay? So to address this threat, in the first project, my research aims to analyze the critical infrastructures and detect vulnerabilities and bugs in this service. Okay. The approach that we have used include code inspection, software testing, and automated bug detection. Okay. Take the automated bug detection as an example. We are building Fathers. Fathers essentially is a program that can generate input and send the input to the target program that we want to analyze. So in this case, the target program are the critical infrastructure service in the blockchain network. And then the Father will run the target program and collect coverage information, and then use the coverage information to guide itself to generate new input. So this process continues to involve itself, and eventually it will find interesting input that can crash or trigger vulnerabilities in the target program, which is the critical infrastructure.
Sorry, Doctor, which software, which code do you have access to?
The relay service and P2P network and memory pool.
Or they provide you could have.
Yeah, so it's open memory, and the software is open source, right? We can access blockchain software and we can download it, we can run it. Any other questions?
Well, what about attack services within different exchanges like Binance or Coinbase, where there's going to be a software attack service that interplays with the relay service?
Oh, yeah, so if the relay service is running by itself, it's not open to users, then we cannot access it for sure, right? But in general, there are many open, relay service that are available in the real world, and that is offered to everybody to access. So we are analyzing them actually. Question?
So the thing in Violet, okay, is open source and you compiled it and you're testing against your implementation. Is that correct?
No, these services are implemented by the blockchain community, blockchain developer community, and the software is provided for users to download and launch node to join the network. So we are not developing the blockchain service by ourselves. We just use them and analyze them.
Yeah, but you have to actually
Yes.
have the services on your local machine or
Yeah,
a local area.
Yeah, for sure. We need to download the software and run it and generate input to test them. Yeah, that's correct.
And then the point-to-point network, if you're testing it on yourself, whatever, your local area net, how many nodes in the point-to-point network do you have? 50, 100, 50,000, 2 million, something like that, or?
Oh, so for P2P network, we just do a small scale test. But once we discover vulnerability, we will not test it on the real world P2P network. We will verify it. We will not test it, but we will verify whether the real P2P network is vulnerable. But we will talk about it that in our later slides.
What are the addresses of the TCP network in the wild? Are they IP6, IPv6?
Very good question. So essentially today they are using IPv4.
It's what, IPv4?
Yes.
So blockchain is running over IPv4.
Yes. Network.
I'm just curious, how many? I mean, there's only so many nodes in the IPv4, so they have to be. It's like Cox cable, They
just supplementing, so
you
they're
have an IP address, but you don't really, it's behind something. Okay, have fun.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. So yeah, so let's look at the research outcome of my first research project on the relay service, right? So by applying the software testing techniques, we are able to find a vulnerability in which we find that the attackers can send a request to run infinite loop by using one of the API provided by the relay service. Okay, so we can say by running an infinite loop, it can exhaust the computing power of the relay service, right? And then you can disable the service of the relay service, right? And in this research, in this outcome, we published the result in NDSS 2021, and we found a dual denial of service attack. And we also verified after we discovered this vulnerability, we verified the vulnerability in the real world relay service. And unfortunately, we find all of them are vulnerable to this denial of service attack. Then on the P2P network, okay, in this research, we are interested in understanding the topology of the real world P2P network, not the vulnerability or source in the P2P network. But why it is important to understand the topology of the P2P network? So assume that the P2P network topology is a star type of topology. If so, what would be the consequence? If it's a star type of topology, the attacker can just attack the central node, right? And disable the central node. By disabling the central node, we can see that the nodes on the edge become isolated, right? They cannot propagate transactions, they cannot receive blocks, right, from the P2P network. Okay, so this star type of topology motivates us to design a technique to uncover the entire P2P network topology. And in our paper published in ACM IMC 2021, we proposed a technique called top shot, which used the replacement transactions to detect the connections between different nodes in the network. And then we are able to uncover the real blockchain P2P network topology. Right? On the right-hand figure, we show the topology, snapshot of the topology in one of the blockchain network, P2P network. And in this word map, the red dots are the nodes in the P2P network, and the blue line, the green lines are the connections between the nodes. So we can say essentially this real P2P network is not a star type of topology, right? So that means the blockchain P2P network is somehow robust, right? There is no single point of failure in this P2P network. So it's hard for an attacker to find a central node and isolate the nodes from the network. So we somehow prove the blockchain P2P network is secure.
I actually also, why did you consider the star when from the beginning it was, how do you call it, it was understood, at least to me, that there was no master node,
Yes.
central node.
Yeah.
Were you trying to uncover if there were any particular nodes or places of nodes that had greater amounts of traffic?
Exactly. Yes.
That could have cut off other sections of the network.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So we don't know before we start our project, we don't know the P2P network topology, right? But then we came up with a method to uncover the P2P network topology and detect if there are some central node or node that play a significant importance in this P2P network, right? And then if there are some nodes, then this P2P network is vulnerable. But unfortunately, there is no such node. So that is our research outcome in this paper.
A couple of questions. One on the methodology. Talking about testing, trying to indicate that there is a problem there. Tooling methods that you implemented into trying to find out the vulnerabilities. That's one. The other one is what distinguish. I mean, this is an open source code,
Yes.
and I'm sure that they've done security work on it and checking, otherwise nobody would have used it. So what distinguish your research that you believe that you've done something that previous researchers have not angled?
Yeah, so take the relay service as an example, right? We discovered one of the API that allows users to send a request to run infinite loop, right? And that infinite loop actually depends on the smart contract, which is another program, which is a program that can be run on top of blockchain. So this API is not offered in any other traditional.
So that was only within the Ethereum block.
Yeah, that's only within the blockchain community, within the blockchain focused companies or APIs. Okay, so essentially, if you utilize other traditional methods, you cannot find such bugs or vulnerabilities.
And the types of tools and methods of test cases, what did you check for vulnerabilities? What were you utilizing?
It actually based on our understanding on the API's usage.
I mean, it's code inspection, so use some SAS tool.
Yes, we just generate
Just static.
Yes,
Did you run a tool on the code itself?
we built our own tool actually.
Within this research in Shot, did you find that there was an upper and lower bound for the number of nodes that a singular node would communicate with within the peer-to-peer network?
So
That would.
So your question is, are there up bound and low bound of the number of nodes in this P2P network, or
the number of nodes that a singular node would communicate with?
very good question. Are there any nodes that only connect to one node?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
are there any like singular connections, or is there a lower bound that nodes have to meet in order to be involved in the network? And is there a node that connects to all of the nodes, in which case is there an upper bound?
A very good question. Actually, we find there are some supernode, we call supernode, that connect the majority of the nodes. Okay, and we also find that there are some few nodes that connect to a very few neighbors. We suspect this node that could be vulnerable to, isolation or condition attacks. Right? That's a very good question.
Did you find that was kind of a geographic thing? Like I noticed in this map specifically, we have Japan and California kind of competing, it seems like, for a supernode status here and communicating with each other. And then as far as like the lower bounds, like nodes that would be communicating with only a few, is that a geographic thing where they're only like a few 100 miles apart as opposed to being continents?
That's a very good question. We didn't look into that type of analysis. We just present the degree of the node and then show the distribution. But yeah, that's a very good insight. Yeah, we probably look into it. Yeah. So now let's look at the last infrastructure, which is the memory pool. We mentioned that the memory pool essentially is a buffer that stores users' transaction, right? Since it's a buffer, it has a limited size, right? So to manage this limited buffer, we find a vulnerability, unfortunately, that allows attackers to send invalid transaction to evict valid transaction from the memory pool. Okay, so we just show an example of the attack here, and in the memory pool, you have two normal transaction, valid transaction buffered in this memory pool, and their price are between 30 and 40, and the nonce basically is the order of the transaction from 1 to 2, and then the attacker can just grab an invalid transaction and offer a high price of 50 and send the transaction to the memory pool. And we find that the memory pool will evict transaction based on the price. So high price transaction can evict low price transaction. So we can say if the memory pool receives TX3, the transaction 1, TX1 will be evicted because it has the lowest price. Right? After transaction 1 is evicted by TX3, the memory pool offers TX2 and TX3. Those two transactions are invalid transactions because of the nonce gap. Okay? So we find that the attacker essentially can send one invalid transaction and it cause the memory pool stores or buffers invalid transactions. And then we can say if the memory pool buffers invalid transactions, miner cannot include transaction into the block. Right? So the block produced by the miner will contain a very limited number of valid transactions, right? So we published the result in HMCCS 2021, and we also verified the vulnerability in the blockchain testnet. And on the right figure, we show the attack performed by us. Okay, so in the figure, the blocks are on the first column, and the number of transactions included in each block is in the third column. We can say before our attack begins, each block includes more than 40, 50 transactions. And once our attack begins, each block includes 0 or 1 transactions. Right? And then after our attack starts, the service resumes, right? The service resumes. So this suggests that our attack is very effective to disable the memory pool service in the testnet. Okay. So we report all of the vulnerabilities discovered in this research project to the blockchain developer community, and they acknowledged our vulnerability, and they also avoid some bug bounties. So at this point, I talk about the first threat of the public blockchain, in which attackers can join the network and cause damages to the blockchain critical infrastructure. Question.
What's an uncle?
Sorry, what?
It says uncles.
Okay, uncles is an orphan block, so it's a definition of another type of block in the blockchain. So you have a fork. Blockchain is a chain of block, but sometimes there may be some fork in this chain. And that fork is called uncle block.
Okay. So as part of the point of the transactional attack here to kind of overwhelm the mempool with forks of this specific transaction until it picks up that fork and takes the blockchain.
So the fork block, right? The anchor block, right?
Yeah.
The anchor block essentially is when miners they compete with each other and they
Right.
find the block at the same time, but only one can win the competition. So the other one that lose the competition generate an anchor block. Okay, then let's talk about the second threat in the blockchain. The second threat actually is caused by the other two properties of the blockchain, which is the irreversibility and anonymity. Okay. We find that, so we can see once the transaction is included in the block, they cannot be reverted, right? And the blockchain cannot be tempered. And anonymity, the transactions are anonymous. No one can uncover which entity controls which account in the blockchain. So we can say these properties essentially aims to protect the privacy of users. However, there is another new security risk. The criminals can abuse blockchain to conduct digital crimes. And since it is anonymous, right? So you cannot hold them accountable, right? So in this, to address this threat, actually in the real world, there are some real world incidents that in which the criminals are attacking or hacking the computing systems and asking the victims to pay cryptocurrencies to get their system unlocked, right? For example, the Colloquium pipeline, they pay roughly 5 million Bitcoin to the hackers in order to get their system unlocked. And because Bitcoin is anonymous for the hackers, so you cannot find who controls who is the hacker. So in my second research project, we are focusing on understanding, detecting, and defending against blockchain misuses.
Could you go back one? But this was a blockchain issue, correct?
Yes, this is the blockchain threat, the threat in the blockchain.
Oh, the threat was something else and the ransom was via blockchain.
So yeah, they launched ransomware in traditional computer applications, but they use blockchain to collect the payment. Right?
Isn't much of the anonymity lost as soon as you try to exchange into a real world currency or like a useful currency?
So
Like
can you repeat that question?
I can't pay my rent in Bitcoin, yeah. So like your anonymity is lost once you try to hit an exchange because all of them have KFC now or KYC.
So sorry, can you repeat that question again?
Isn't much of the anonymity
Yes.
in blockchain cryptocurrency specifically lost when exchanging from cryptocurrency to a real currency?
Yes. So that's a very good insight. Actually, when the hackers, let's say the hackers wants to withdraw the cryptocurrency with cash, right? And they definitely need to use some service to withdraw the cryptocurrency. But unfortunately, there are some services that allow the hackers to laundry the money, laundry the cryptocurrency. And so I don't want to talk about too much, but there's another service called a mixing service in which the user is just mixing their payments and with the service and transfer the payment to a set of other accounts. And so we cannot track who the hacker is when after they use a mixing service. Right. But yeah, that's a very good question. But unfortunately,
or is it just like really different?
Really difficult.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to trace who the hacker is after they use mixing service.
I mean, like that's the point of the blockchain, though, is some immutability
Yes.
of this transaction. So since the transactions themselves are immutable, any fraction of Bitcoin or any fraction of any other cryptocurrency that's not something like Monero would be traceable. It's just having an algorithm that'll do it efficiently.
So the question is, a fraction of the cryptocurrency, if
Yeah, because that's how these mixers work, right? Is you put money into a wallet at the beginning of this mixer. That mixer takes it and splits it off into a bunch of different transactions, splits those into a bunch of transactions, but those are all going to come back together into a single transaction or into a single wallet. That single wallet.
okay, so that is essentially is not how mixing service works. So the mixing service work like this. You have 10 people, they want to use this service. So the 10 people, they send their payment to the mixing service. And the mixing service will generate another set of 10 accounts and then pay them back to the original mixing service users. So by 10 and 10, you cannot track who the 10 account on the left, on the right hand. So you cannot map them one by one to one, right? So that is how mixing service works. It's not split the payment by multiple, just mixing multiple users together and then distribute them. So you cannot find the one to one match, right? Yeah. So that's how mixing service works.
Fair enough.
Question.
Have you ever checked that little checkbox on Form 1040 that says, have you done any cryptocurrency?
Only once.
I mean,
That's obviously one way to track people. If they check the checkbox.
I don't know, yeah, but yeah, I don't know how whether they check the box.
Actually, an even more interesting question is, can you actually, if you provide a service that says, we're gonna get the people, the evildoers, is there a way to put a tracker data? It's almost like cookies, you know, put a tracker cookie into this thing and see what happens. Has anybody ever tried that strategy?
That's a good question. I don't know whether there are some surveys performed in the real world, whether they apply this technique to track people that are using the service. I don't know yet. Yeah, that's a good question. So talking about this project, my second project aims to understanding, detecting, and defending against blockchain misuses. Okay. Actually, besides the ransomware, there are some other fraudulent schemes and attacks happening on the blockchain, such as Ponzi schemes, right, and free giveaway scam and arbitrage bot scam. Okay, so everybody knows how Ponzi scheme works, right? And for free giveaway scam, the scammers just launched a website and impersonate celebrities and promise that if you participate in this scheme, you will get doubled when you send some payment first. Okay, so this is one type of fraudulent scheme. And for arbitrary bot scam, scammers just provide you some code and ask you to run the code, and they promise that running the code can, exploit the arbitrary opportunities from the cryptocurrency market. So there are many different fraudulent scams and schemes. So in this project, we find that essentially the scammers are using online social network to distribute the fraudulent schemes, such as Twitter and YouTube. So in this project, we are building detection systems, fraudulent scam detection systems. Okay, so we are combining machine learning techniques and blockchain domain knowledge to detect the cryptocurrency scams. Okay, so we are building a detection system that consists of a data collector, which collect data from online social network and utilizing a natural language processing model to classify the collected data and detect the scam instance. And then we apply blockchain domain knowledge to identify the crypto wallet controlled by the scammers and analyze the profit. And then we report the scammer's crypto wallet to authorities such as exchange to prevent the withdrawal of the crypto scam crypto wallet. So talking about the research outcome, okay, so we analyzed the giveaway scam, and we find that the scammers are utilizing Twitter leads to target Twitter users, okay, and they ask Twitter users to visit the website to participate in this scheme. So we build a detection system that collects data from Twitter leads, and then we build a list classifier to analyze and classify the list and to identify the scam list, and then we extract the scammer's crypto wallet, which is the crypto address, and then we save it in a database, and then we report them to the authorities. And our research findings find that there are more than 100,000 scam lists on Twitter, and we find there are in total we find 300 scam domains controlled by scammers. And from this domain, we identified more than 120 scam crypto wallets. And by tracing the transactions of this scam crypto wallet, we find more than 300 people have been attacked. And the total loss is over $1 million.
What about protection for market manipulation?
Market manipulation. That's a good. That is a different fraudulent scheme, right?
Yeah.
Like the pound scheme, right? Or market manipulation means the scammer may pop up the price and then disappear, right?
Well, that's done every day, by the way, by people who have a lot of influence and money.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's not by people who don't have a lot of influence. Are you familiar with the SafeMoon scandal that came through?
No,
I made money on that.
Say it again. Sorry. What is that?
SafeMoon?
SafeMoon? But I didn't look into that. Yep. Yeah. So this is the table that summarizes the distribution of the victims' loss in different blockchains, and we could find that on Ethereum, people have lost most of the asset on Ethereum, like more than $600,000 US. The second scam we analyzed is the arbitrage bot scam. Again, it's a scam that utilizes the YouTube as the distribution channel, and ask people to download a code, smart contract, and the problem is that running the smart contract can accumulate funds for victims, but unfortunately there are some backdoors in the smart contract, and that once people depositing asset into the smart contract, the money will be transferred to the scammer's account. So we develop another detection system to collect different YouTube videos, and then we extract the scammer's crypto wallet from the scam smart contract. In total, we find more than 10,000 scam YouTube videos, and these videos are created by over 7,000 scam YouTube accounts, and we extracted more than 1,600 scam crypto wallets, and this time we find more than 25,000 victims have been attacked, and their total loss is over $50 million. So this is a significant amount of asset lost by the victims. So the result is published in ACM Psychometrics 2024, and we developed a detection system called Crypto Scam Hunter. And this is the victims lost in different blockchain in Ethereum and Binance blockchain. Okay? And here the victims have lost most of their asset on Ethereum, which is over $30 million. So yeah, so by this I have elaborated the threat and the security risk in public blockchains, and this research project is done by my students and collaborate with my external collaborators, and my research project is are supported by different funding agencies such as NSF and the Ethereum Foundation. And with this, thank you for your attention and time. And if you have any questions, and I will be happy to take them. Yes.
Well, there was already a lot of questions, but we have time for more.
Yeah.
I have one. For the P2P network topology, did you have any idea of how it changed over time?
That's a very good question. So this is just one snapshot of the P2P network, right? But as time goes by, nodes may disappear from the network, or new nodes may join the network. So definitely the topology is changing. So, but we just run our technique one time. But there are some other research that shows that more than 5% of the nodes will disappear, let's say, in 1 week. So that suggests that the blockchain topology is highly dynamic, right?
Nice. And just to confirm my understanding for all this, the first group of research, for all cases, did you have to be a member node of the network?
So as far as when we test the program, we do not need to join the network and work as a node. But when we need to verify the vulnerability, we definitely need to launch a node and join the network.
Bad question. The tax, like
Tax
would be done by member nodes of the network.
Yes, for the memory pool attack, definitely the attacker needs to be a node.
Yeah.
And then for the relay service, the attacker don't have to be a node, right? Just a normal user.
So the API can be exposed.
Yeah,
Okay.
to publish.
Interesting. So you don't have to be.
Yes.
Thanks.
Was there a lower bound to the number of nodes that an attacker would have to instantiate in order to gain small control among other member nodes around it, so that it can possibly do a fork attack or I forget the specific term. I think it's a DOER attack of the network itself. Like I know that's a thing in Ethereum, and I know that's a theoretical thing in Bitcoin.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, like, so how blockchain works. So essentially, if the attacker can control more than 51% of the nodes in the network, then they can completely change the blockchain. They can completely control the blockchain, and then they can manipulate the transactions. They can change your balance. They can do whatever they want. But this is why blockchain is designed to be secure, because of the open membership. It encourages honest people to join the network. So it's become very hard for attackers to control the 51% of the nodes. Right?
Did you find that was agnostic to different proof types within blockchain? So you have proof of work, which is I think what you were primarily looking at here in Ethereum and Bitcoin and BCB, but there's also proof of stake and proof of space.
Yes.
And also semi-private proof of work with like Hyperledger.
Yes.
Are these same vulnerabilities present in those particular infrastructure types and frameworks?
That's a very good question. So actually, you know a lot about the blockchain, right? But so for the blockchain, the proof system works on the consensus layer. Right, so it defines how node agree with each other, how node process the blocks. But the vulnerabilities we discover is still in the application layer. Okay, so that means the vulnerabilities we discover applies to blockchains that use different proof systems.
Suggestion: since you've been able to scan and find 11,000 fraudulent lists,
Yes.
on Twitter, 10,000 in YouTube.
YouTube, yeah.
How about you commercialize YouTube? If they are not finding it,
We are.
I mean,
I'm working on. Yeah.
You should.
On it. Yeah. That's a good suggestion.
Yeah, what happens to the domains, those scam domains? that somebody, either you or somebody else must have recorded it.
Yes, we
And
report.
they actually have to have a domain name service somewhere, whatever, controlled by the United States.
Yeah,
So,
yes, so we reported the scam domains to the domain service. And so some of the domain are already taken down by the service. And it's their responsibility to identify who set up the domain, right? Who registered the domain. But we do not have that authority to suspend the domain. We do not have the ability to, hold them accountable, right?
Yeah,
We
that's
just
why
report them.
you're saying your court would fail. That's
Yes.
well, any idea of the locations of the domains? Or can you not discover that from once you get the domain, since you actually don't know who registered it, you don't know the location of their, of the entity that registered it. Is there any easy way for anybody to get a geographic word cloud or something like that?
That's a good question. So for this research project, we didn't look into the locations registered in these domains, but there are some tools that we can use to reverse engineer the locations of the registered. But unfortunately, the scammer may still utilize some third parties, right, to register a scam domain, and in which it is hard to, find the actual location of the scam or the actual name of the scammer. There's some third party service that support scammers to register a domain, scam domain. Okay, so it's a little bit difficult if the scammers utilize such service.
Yeah, I mean, in principle, is there any inherent relationship between domain, host, and user? No, right?
Yes.
I can
Yes.
purchase a domain distributed in Russia
Yes.
and a host in Australia.
Yes.
There's
So
no-
there are some service available.
Other questions? I'm sure we can do this all day.